What is your favorite state capital? Speaking of which, I just made a video on the top 10 best state capitals, so check that out after watching this video. But today I thought we'd talk about a capital city that, despite being a great place to live, is often overshadowed by the bigger cities in its state. That's right, Albany, New York, Carson City, Nevada, Tallahassee, Florida. No, not that one either. Okay, so it turns out there are a lot of overlooked capitals, which is why we're finally giving Sacramento, California a chance to be in the spotlight. It's right here on a map and is located at the confluence of the Sacramento and American rivers in the northern half of California. And sure, it doesn't have nearly as much stuff to do as, say, LA or San Francisco, but it's also a lot smaller and cheaper. Around 522,000 residents call Sac-Town home, with just under 2.4 million living in the metro area. But due to the affordable cost of living, well, affordable for California standards, more than 25,000 new people move here each year, making it the fastest growing major city in California. Honestly, I wish I would have invested in real estate here a few years back, because the housing market is a gold mine. Get it? Because the gold rush was here? Anyways, Sacramento was pretty much the epicenter of the California gold rush, which is why it became the state capital in the first place. Well, technically, it's why it became a city at all, having been incorporated in 1850. And while the gold panning has since faded into a tourist attraction, Sacramento's current claim to fame is that it's the most diversely integrated city in the United States. Well, that you'd actually want to live in. Sorry, Oakland. But that wasn't always the case. California's capital is undergoing a huge transformation and has improved tremendously from the boring, sketchy, big cow town it once was into the increasingly hip and fun place that it is today. Between the amazing art scene, great live music and nightlife, fun amusement parks, professional sports, and fantastic food with some of the best farm-to-table restaurants, there's really something here for everyone. And with beautiful weather and tons of tree-lined parks, trails, and the two rivers to hike, bike, or kayak in, Sacramento's also an outdoors lover's paradise. But things aren't all sunshine and rainbows, although there is a lot of sun. So if you're thinking of moving to the capital of the Golden State, be sure to watch my top 10 reasons not to move to Sacramento, California. Number 10. Bad schools. This one shouldn't come as a surprise, since California has some of the worst public schools in the nation, which is likely at least partially due to it also having a student-to-teacher ratio of 21-1. And honestly, the whole all Californian schools suck thing never made much sense to me. I mean, with all the taxes Californians have to pay, you'd think there'd be better funding for education. But California actually ranks 41st out of the 50 states in per-student spending. And out of all the terrible schools in California, the public education system in Sacramento ranks among the worst, with a student-to-teacher ratio of 26-1. That's almost double the national average. In fact, more than 50 schools in Sacramento County are among the 750 worst performing schools in California, and West Campus is the only high school that even ranks among the top 138 high schools in the state. Now, to be fair, some of the wealthier suburbs like Davis, Folsom, or Rockland actually do have decent and above average schools, but they're few and far between. Number 9. There's no beach. If you're from somewhere else in the country, you may have wondered why Californians put up with the insane cost of living, taxes, traffic, pretty much everything terrible about living in a big city. And the answer is that while most Californians hate all of those things, they'd say it's worth it for the beautiful beaches, gorgeous weather, and giant mountains in your backyard. But the landscape around Sacramento is pretty dull, and the closest beach is 100 miles away. Honestly, if it weren't for the orange and palm trees, you might mistake Sac-Town for the Midwest. Now, to be fair, if you really love the ocean but are also a ski enthusiast, Sacramento's ideally located for weekend trips, since it's only around an hour and a half from San Francisco and the beach, and less than 2 hours from Lake Tahoe and the mountains. And there are the two rivers running through town for water sports, or you could go for a dip in Folsom Lake nearby. Well, as long as another drought doesn't decide to plague the city. Number 8. It gets hot. While most cities in the Golden State have the cool ocean breeze to relieve them from the heat, Sacramento is just hot. Expect the high 80s and 90s every day from May through September, and don't be surprised when it regularly hits 100 degrees throughout the summer. Oh, and remember how I said Sacramento gets a lot of sun? Well, I literally meant the only thing you'll see in the sky during the summer is the sun. There's basically no clouds from June to September. Now, the good news is it's a dry heat, so it's not nearly as bad as, say, Texas or Florida. And the Delta breeze, which is basically Sacramento's natural air conditioning, will usually cool down the city on most nights, so mornings and evenings are pretty pleasant. And since Sacramento is in California, the winters never get too cold. It'll normally be in the 60s or 70s, and daytime temperatures rarely drop below 50 degrees. So at least that's a plus. Number 7. The homeless. When I lived in California, I would always hear this rumor.
Oh, Sacramento is so dangerous and a crime-infested city! Don't go there, you'll get shot or stabbed! Oh!
And while sure, it isn't exactly Plano, Texas, Sac-Town's actually got one of the lowest crime rates among California cities. As long as you stay out of the dangerous neighborhoods like Oak Park, North Highlands, or Del Paso Heights, it's pretty safe. But while Sacramento isn't this crime-ridden city with danger lurking around every corner, what you will find around every corner are homeless people. You literally can't go anywhere in downtown, midtown, or the American River Parkway without running into a bunch of them or their tent cities. Now, homelessness is a huge problem in the state of California in general, but Sacramento County has 5,570 confirmed cases of homelessness, and over 4,000 of them are considered unsheltered. This is honestly really sad, and it's only getting worse and worse each year. The city just doesn't seem to have a plan to fix it. Number 6. Parking. While there is a surplus of homelessness in the downtown and midtown areas, there's a severe lack of parking. Like literally, you're more likely to find a mermaid than a parking spot. No, like literally, there are mermaids that swim in a tank above a dive bar here, and there's almost never any street parking available. So you'll end up having to park in one of the overly expensive garages on your night out, and depending on how long you stay, it could cost you anywhere from $10 to $25. The city's really trying to promote walkability, public transportation, and biking. And while most areas are pretty bikeable, the public transportation here is awful, and anywhere outside of downtown or midtown is definitely not walkable. The entire metro area stretches over 5,000 square miles, and once you leave the city center, it starts turning super suburban. So while it's inconvenient to drive here with the parking difficulties, there isn't really an alternative. Number 5. Traffic. Good old traffic. Always here to make life just that much worse. Honestly, looking for street parking here would be fun compared to sitting in the terrible traffic. Whether your commute involves the 50, I-80, I-80 business, or I-5, it doesn't really matter. They're all horrible. Sure, it's not quite as bad as LA traffic, but Sacramento's also a lot smaller, and it's still pretty darn close. The rush hours usually last from 6 to 10 a.m., and then again from 2 to 7 p.m., and bridge crossings are always a pain. Sacramentans actually spend an average of 64 hours a year lost to congestion. So if you move here, just know you will be sitting in awful traffic every single day. Well, unless you never leave your house, which actually sounds like a good idea now that I mentioned it, since you won't have to deal with people tailgating you, flipping you off, and scaring the heebie-jeebies out of you with their loud honking and lack of turn signal usage, because in all honesty, the drivers here are the worst. Okay, so technically not like the absolute worst, but Sacramento consistently ranks among the top 3 cities for the worst drivers in the nation. They've actually had the worst ratings of both accidents and DUIs over the past decade, and I don't think I've ever seen a city where so many people take red lights as a suggestion to stop rather than a law. And as if the traffic and horrendous drivers weren't bad enough, Sacramento also has some of the worst pothole-ridden roads in the country. Over 70% of the city's roadways have been rated in either poor or mediocre condition, and they aren't getting fixed anytime soon since the local government claims to not have enough tax money. But at least you can cross the river on this cool bridge. Is it worth it? Probably not. Number 4. Pollution. You know what pairs quite nicely with cars and congestion? Pollution. It really just brings out the flavor of some postmodern misfortune. With pretty much every resident commuting by car and gridlock traffic creating more than 28 million gallons of excess fuel a year, it's safe to say Sacramento has a pollution problem. Well, that and the fact that, like I've only mentioned 22 times now, Sacramento is in California, and California has some of the most polluted cities in the country. And by that I mean that 7 out of the 8 most polluted metro areas are in the Golden State. Sac-Town is the 5th most polluted city by ozone pollution, the 11th most polluted city by short-term particle pollution, and received an F grade rating from the American Lung Association. But hey, at least it isn't as bad as Fresno or Bakersfield. Although that isn't really saying much. Sorry, Fresno. Number 3. Allergies. Sacramento just isn't good for your lungs. Aside from the pollution, seasonal allergies affect a lot of people here. But I mean, you're surrounded by farms, grass, and a ton of trees. What else would you expect? Allergy season's typically from March to June, and when the Delta breeze starts blowing, well, let me just say gesundheit, because Sacramento has more trees per capita than any other major city, which means lots of pollen and lots of sneezing. Even people who have never had allergies before tend to develop them after living in Sac-Town for a few years. And if you already have seasonal allergies, just keep in mind that Sacramento is one of the top 30 worst US cities for allergy sufferers. Number 2. It's still not cheap. I know I said Sacramento's cheap compared to most other cities in California, but it's still in California, so it obviously isn't a blowout sale either. The median home value is $360,000, and the median rent's around $1,800 a month, which, don't get me wrong, is great for California, but an absolute ripoff compared to most other states. And with so many people from the Bay relocating here with their Silicon Valley paychecks, prices are increasing fast. And it's not just housing. The overall cost of living is 17% above the national average, and groceries and gas are around 20% above the national average. And then, of course, there are the taxes. The sales tax is 8.75%, property tax is 0.84%, the highest bracket for state income tax is 12.3%, and the gas tax is nearly 50 cents per gallon. Oh yeah, and let's not forget about the little things that make California, like that lovely grocery bag tax that just brightens everyone's day. Ooh, I got a smile on my face just thinking about it. But wait a minute, if there's still awful roads, poor schools, and an abundant unsheltered homeless population, where exactly is all this tax money going? Number 1. It's hard to find a good job. I know I just mentioned that Sacramento is one of the more affordable places to live in California, and well, it is. The median household income here is around $73,000, and since the cost of living is still much cheaper than the coastal cities, you should be able to live comfortably with most jobs. Of course, though, that is if you can actually find a job, and it's not as easy as it sounds. Sure, there are some good jobs if you work in government, healthcare, or tech, but outside of that, you'll be hard-pressed to find good employment opportunities. Sadly, I know this is kind of the case in most places right now, with the nationwide unemployment rate likely above 15 to 20%. But Sacramento was just starting to recover from the 2008 recession more than 10 years later. The unemployment rate was still 4.8% before the economy shut down, and if history's any indication, Sacramento doesn't seem to bounce back very fast from recessions. So it'll probably be a while before you see any job openings. Now be sure to leave a like and subscribe and comment down below what city you want me to cover next. Sacramento honestly gets a lot of unnecessary hate in my opinion, as it really is a great city. If you're looking to raise a family in an affordable Californian city, I honestly can't think of many better places to do it than the capital.